Hello, hello. How's everybody doing? Good morning. It's morning here. It's evening, maybe where you are. Hello, hello. Welcome. You guys doing good? You know what I love is I love for people to type in the chat, where are you? I'm in the Hudson Valley of New York. So not New York City, but a couple hours north, and it's fall here. So we've got a lot of beautiful leaves and all the things. And I just want to make sure that everyone's here. So let's just see, we're starting. Okay, great. We are live. So welcome. I'm Kate. My name is Kate Bradley Chernis, and this is the copywriting rules you wish you had in college. They're going to be a little bit strange and bizarre for you guys. Chances are, I like to break my own rules, and I like to break rules in general. So get ready to be surprised. And if you want to ask questions, feel free to as well. But I'm just going to start going through, and I'll stop every few slides and check on into the comments and see how our things are going. And we might get some of them at the end as well. So who am I? Let's start there, because you might be wondering, like, why am I qualified to even discuss copywriting rules with you? I used to be a rock and roll DJ. My last gig was broadcasting to 20 million listeners a day for XM satellite radio. And that's now Sirius XM, right? And in fact, that's me. That's my now husband, David. But there we are with the Rolling Stones. That was a super, super fun day. Um, and I also used to own a marketing agency that got Walmart 130% ROI year over year for 3 years. And I combined what I learned from these two careers into a startup that I now own called Lately. And Lately uses artificial intelligence to actually atomize any long form content like blogs or podcasts or videos just like this into dozens or even hundreds of pre-tested social posts. And we do this, by the way, just I don't want to legitimize all this, and then we'll talk about the rules, because the rules govern Lately's AI, right? So one of the things I learned about the neuroscience of music when I was a rock and roll DJ was that when you listen to a new song, your brain must instantly access every other song you've ever heard in that moment, and it's looking for familiar touch points because it's trying to index that song in the library of your brain. So in that moment, it pulls forth nostalgia, memory, emotion. These are all the things that are the bedrock for trust. And trust is what is required for you to give me your money, right? So now think about this. When you speak, your voice, like a song, it has a note. It's a frequency. There's a frequency to the sound of your voice. And when you write copy, when you write text, and someone reads the text, they hear your voice in their head. So, as an author of marketing messaging or sales messaging or any messaging, it's your job to give me those same familiar touch points that'll trigger nostalgia, memory, emotion, all the things that bring forth trust, that key element of all marketing and sales transactions, right? So that, along with the spreadsheet idea, is what built the bedrock for Lately. With Lately, what we do is we connect to any social channel that you have. We study everything that you've ever published, and we're looking for what gets you the highest engagement. And we build a writing model based on this, and then we use that writing model to turn a conference like this into dozens of pre-tested social posts that we already know are going to get you the highest engagement. And in the case of video, with video clips. So customers like Gary Vee have an entire Twitter channel fueled 100% by Lately, and that gets him a 12,000% increased engagement. The reason this matters is, like I said, the rules that govern Lately are the rules I'm going to teach you guys today. All right, so you can do this by yourself. You don't need Lately to do it. It's a lot harder, but it's what I did for Walmart back in the day, manually by hand. So this is super important to remember. And if your boss is ever giving you a hard time about, like, why are you spending so much time on the copywriting for the company, this is why. So companies waste $400 billion on bad writing each year in the US alone, right? So just imagine globally, obviously, is more. It's $400 billion. It's amazing. And it's not just on social media marketing and sales writing, but also internal communications too. How we Slack each other, how we text each other, how we email each other. When you're asking your husband to take out the garbage, right? Or you want your kids to do their homework, any communication that you have, typically people are really poor at writing. Now, companies are trying to catch up and make up for this, but they spend 3.1 billion each year on remedial writing training. Remedial writing training. Like, think about how awful that sounds. Like you're like, oh, I'm going back to school. So you don't want to be that person, and you want to get it right, but effort is required. So these are my rules. My team from Lately calls me Kately. You guys can call me that too. Like I said, these rules are the bedrock for Lately's artificial intelligence. They actually get us a 98% sales conversion, just in case you were wondering about the efficacy and the ROI on this. So 98% sales conversion. I'm not kidding. And we've had that for the last 2 years. We don't do any paid ads, no cold calls, and no cold emails. This is organic social media copywriting. And these rules, by the way, you can apply to any copywriting, whether it's the copy of a website, a newsletter, a press release, anything. They're also the same rules that grew our monthly recurring revenue 240% in 12 months. So these rules work. And then, like I started with before, they're a little bit cowboy. So you might flinch, and that's fine. And everything, like I said, rules are made to be broken. So these rules can be twisted into ways that work for you. But feel free to pop some questions in the chat, and I'll check in every few rules and see what you guys are thinking. Okay. All right, cool. And if you're just coming on, do chime in. Let me know where you are. I love the weather. It's not a boring topic at all. So let me know. Is it raining, snowing? I know it's snowing in Vancouver yesterday, which is crazy. Is it hot? Are you lucky enough to be in South America, perhaps? Let me know. All right. So this is my favorite rule. And raise your hand, female entrepreneurs, female women in business. I find that we particularly are guilty of this particular rule, breaking this rule, not in a good way, and that's undercutting what we're writing with very weak words, right? So your confidence is everything. Confidence gives you, the writer, the author, authority, makes you believable, and gives people that trust, right? Trust is the key commodity we're all looking to trigger, right? You want to write like you own me, that in every way. And I don't want you to undercut your own words with weak words. A needy team needs, right? Needy. No one wants to be that needy person. You don't think, right? See the difference there? I just wanted to say hi. Probably, maybe, possibly. You want to make statements. You don't need to lie, obviously, and you don't need to spin, but you just want to have that confidence. And I'll show you an example here. So in this case, I love this example. Marketing, I'm going to read you guys these out loud too, so you can see. Marketing is like brushing your teeth with an electric toothbrush. Yes, the head moves on its own, but you still have to hold the brush. Work required, human plus machines. More on how AI and humans must both be part of the equation. Thank you. Rush Me and Team Wave. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys examples this whole time, and I'm going to break them down, and you're going to start to see the rules repeating themselves throughout. So in this one, writing like a boss, you can see I'm just making a bunch of statements. Marketing is like brushing your teeth. I'm not saying marketing is kind of like, or I think marketing is like. See that? I'm just making the statement. Yes, the head moves on its own, but you still have to hold the brush. So again, I'm really putting myself in the authority chair here. You still have to hold the brush, right? That's a command. And then I'm using my hashtags to support that authority. Work required. Again, that's a command. You can see the verbs here and what I'm leaning on. More on how AI and humans must both be part of the equation. See, must is the authority word there. Okay, so I think you guys kind of can get the point there. But really think about that. When you're writing, look at what you've written afterwards and go through and see, are you guilty of using these words? I am all the time. I have to, rethink it, especially if I'm doing a presentation to venture capitalists, for example, or even in sales. Now, there are places for these words. I'm not saying they're not, but I want you to not second guess yourself, but rethink what you're writing and see what your confidence level is, right? Okay. So this one is another favorite one. get ready to blush. It's the worst. I know you're all guilty. So many of us are guilty of this. I've been guilty forever. But the phrase checkout is incredibly lazy. It's vapid, right? It's something we all lean on. It's a crutch. That's what we call that in radio. A crutch is like something you just say without even thinking about it. You're not even thinking what the meaning is. Awesome is another one. I'm guilty of using the word awesome as a crutch all the time. And when you do that, it takes away the meaning, right? Awesome no longer means truly awesome because we killed the word. We overdid it. Checkout is the same idea. So instead of using the word checkout, I want you to think about a more active, purposeful, and valueful verb that actually better defines the call to action that you intend. And the reason is because check out instantly cues no trust, right? The opposite of what you want. So think about any time you've ever heard anybody in a anywhere say, "Hey, check out my blog, check out the new newsletter, check out my new website," right? There's nothing value. Why would I do that? What's in it for me? That's not communicated in any way, right? It makes a link suspect if that's what you want. Check out my link. I don't know what I'm going to get if I check out this link. It's not surface to me. So it can cue like a spammy assumption, and that's not what you want at all, right? So I really want you to think about like the value, and the value, by the way, can often be not what you presume it to be. For example, it may not be save time, save money, because for a lot of people that isn't the value. It might be saving the environment or feeling like part of a community. So really, the value is something really important to brainstorm on. So I'll give you an example here. About to record the next edition of Scaling Your Startup with Mihak and Jason. I even brushed my hair. Subscribe to hear a few copywriting tricks I haven't shared before. So you can see I'm certainly not using checkout. My verb here, my call to action is subscribe, right? But I'm doing more to that. Excuse me. So subscribe to hear a few copywriting tricks I haven't shared before. There's a lot going in here, and I'll break it down. I'm using the word tricks on purpose because not tips are fine too, but tricks make it seem like something you haven't heard before. And also tricks are they make you, if you know tricks, you're on the inside, they're exclusive, they pump your ego up, and people want to know all the tricks, right? They're if it gives them access to being that authority. um, Also, I'm tagging certain people here that are quite well known, so I'm getting some residual off that. And I even brushed my hair, and I'm using parentheses there. I'm trying to give you that like afterthought of my own voice and put you in reality, give you some access to me. So that makes that trust factor come out more. Like I'm the kind of person that like may not always brush my hair, right? Triggering humor. So there's a lot I've done here. And then also tricks I haven't shared before specifically is what I've said. So I'm trying to get people, to come to this class. Maybe they've seen me give this class before, but there's going to be something new in there for them. So you can see how like this is so much more valuable than check out this copywriting class I'm going to give, right? But who cares about that? Hopefully you guys know that makes sense. And by the way, also think about one way that checkout is completely valueless is when, for example, you have and I'm sorry if I'm embarrassing anybody, but say you're doing an interview, a podcast interview, for example, and you say, check out my new podcast interview with Bradley Chernis. Well, so there's nothing there, right? So nobody knows who I am. So there's no reason for them to click and listen. So you have to give them again that value we talked about right before. Okay. So I'm going to just do a check-in with you guys and see how we're doing. Yay. Okay, great. Hey, everybody. Um, you look awesome out there. Again, if you're just checking in, let me know where you're from. I'm in the lower Hudson Valley of New York. So that's a couple hours north of New York City, not the city at all. There's farmland all around me, lots of deers, and the leaves are turning, and it's actually like 70 degrees today. I'm wearing long sleeves, but I'm also wearing shorts because like I don't I don't want summer to end. Okay, so we're gonna keep going here. I'm going to share my screen again. And if you have any questions, just pop them in there. But if you don't, I'm going to keep on going. Okay. So sharing my screen and going back to the old rules. Okay, dokie. So this is the one that I find that people are also really guilty of, me especially, and it's don't bury the lead, right? So the lead is like, meaning like the hottest part of the story. I always do this. I like save it for last, which is, good if you're telling a joke. But honestly, these days you want to put this first. So I'll give you an example. Like in school, we were all taught to, if you're writing an essay, you start your first paragraph where you're kind of like making your case, and you take your time to do that throughout, and then the big aha is all the way at the end. But since we're all so impatient and we don't have time for that, you really have to put those ahas as first as fastable, first as much as you can. So 86, the preamble, right? And that's a lot of times those words I mentioned before, just, probably, think, they're in the front. Those are the things you want to take away. You want to lean on your verbs. Think of all verbs as mini call to action, especially if you use them in the active sense. So instead of, let's see, I want you to go to the store, you would say go to the store. So go becomes the active verb. You see that? I want you to is the extraneous that you want to 86. Now, to put the lead would be, there's a 20% off sale, go to the store, as opposed to go to the store because there's a 20% off sale. See how I did there? I put the value right up front. Commands are commanding, go to the store. See that, right? That gives me that authority. What you're trying to do is to make people feel something. Emotion causes action, and commands pull people forward. They make you lean into it. If the thing, it's just, we all do by nature, right? That's just a natural reaction to anything. And I'll show you again an example here. Vomit then edit. That's my favorite phrase. And what I mean by this is, you want to get everything out on the page, get it all out first, and then go through and look for these tricks that I'm telling you. Like, look for all the stuff that you can pull out. And you want the ratio to really be 1 to 4 or 4 to 1. So it's 1 part vomit, 4 parts editing. So most of your work is done in the editing arena. And really just kind of thinking about all you can go through these rules, but putting your value first, the call to action, the authority, all that kind of stuff. All right. So just kind of keep that one in mind. But here's another example. Don't bury the lead. So, is your LinkedIn company page a turd? We'll cover how to fix that, plus how often to post, when not to tag, video, the bane of personal page analytics, plus the kitchen sink today at 2 p.m. East, etc., etc. May the 4th be with you. So there's a lot I'm going to unpack in this example. I'm including the don't bury the lead. So right away, I mean, my lead here is, I'm going to give you my let's see, not my lead, my value is, I'm going to give you a workshop on how to improve your LinkedIn company page. And mine is terrible, by the way, because the shoemaker has no shoes. But I'm putting that value right up front. I'm doing it in the form of a question, which is very tricksy of me, and on purpose, because a question also makes people lean forward and want an answer. I'm obviously being controversial. I'm using the word turd and the poop emoji. I know everybody can't do this, but I want to make you blush. I want to make you feel that emotion. I want you to lean forward. I want you to smile too. All these things gets emotion, gets reaction, and I'm looking for reshares. I'm looking for clicks. I'm thinking about all this stuff as I'm writing. And by using the word I'm forcing you actually to put yourself in this position right away. So you're instantly imagining what your LinkedIn company page status is, right? And then I'm giving you the value of what we do right away. We'll cover how to fix that. Okay, so there's a fix involved. Everybody likes a fix because that implies something is broken. How to is any kind of how to is some of the most digested content on the web. So I'm tapping into that. And you guys, we're going to talk about this later, but you heard me read it, right? We'll cover how to fix that, plus how often to post, when not to tag, video, the bane of personal page analytics. I'm telling you exactly what we're going to cover here. So it's very clear. There's no mystery. You know what you're going to get up front. The value is visible for you. I don't want you to feel that you're going to be tricked in any way or that there's anything spammy happening here. There's every reason to click and sign up. I'm also tapping into May the 4th, obviously Star Wars fans. So there's a lot going on here, and all of it is very much on purpose. So hopefully that's clear. And I'll pop in for questions and after a couple more tips here. Okay. This one is very tricky, and I already used it for you here. Don't bury the lead, right? So I'm already doing it on you guys. And I want you to think about using negative calls to action instead of positive ones, right? So it doesn't mean be a negative person or write about negative or sad or unhappy things. It means think about the verbs and flip them around, right? So remember to follow these words, or just don't forget to follow these words. Don't is more powerful. Don't makes you lean in. It makes you instantly examine your behavior to see if you're in trouble. And when we're in trouble, we're like, did I feel shame? Right. So I want you to feel that emotion on purpose. I'm trying to trigger this reaction. Don't believe me? See what I did there? Right? You get it? So just think about that again when you're vomiting and then editing. Can you flip any of those verbs around so that they're negative instead? Here's an example. Preach, Drew. Words are the DNA of every sales pitch. The wrong words are costing companies $400 billion in the US alone. Don't let that be you. Join moi for a free copywriting course. So what I'm doing here, you can see that the negative call to action is don't let that be you. And I'm doing it in a different way. It's obviously don't join me. I'm using it within. So it's not necessarily a call to action because the call is join me, but it's combining these two things together, because don't let that be you instantly makes you assess and think, oh my God, is this me? I don't want it to be me, right? So feeling that emotion. By the way, other things I've done that you can see, preach. So I'm using a verb right up front, preach, command. Words are the DNA of every sales pitch. That's a statement, right? Not I think words, or words might be, right? It's a statement. The wrong words are costing companies $400 billion in US alone. That's also a statement. And wrong, see, I'm using another negative word here, and that's on purpose. I'm not saying, the right words could save you 400 billion in the US alone, because it's not as powerful. I'm using the inverse of that. And I think there's a lot of the other thing I'll say here is I use the word join moi because I fancy myself to be like Miss Piggy sometimes, which is crazy. And I intend to use these things to make people to smile at the same time, which is also why I use the emojis, right? And these are designed to be a little humorous because there's so much negativity in there, right? You get that. Okay. So I'm just gonna check in on the old, comment section for a second. How are you guys doing? Great. So, Elika, for the text, I'm gonna read it out loud, and you guys can have a copy of this, and that way you can zoom in and look at it to your heart's desire. Okay. Great. And so you can also zoom in your screen as much as you can. I'm already on as big as it can be. All right. If you guys have other questions, feel free to chime in. Oh, by the way, I'll just drop this in here. This is actually, I can't actually comment, Elisa. So could you drop my LinkedIn profile? It's linkedin.com/Kate Bradley. Just drop that in the comments for people. You guys are welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn afterwards and ask me any questions that you have. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to pop back in and do my screen up. Great. And also, Elisa, if I haven't already given you the link to these slides, just remind me afterwards, and I will. And you can drop them and make it available for anybody too. Okay. So this one is really, really sneaky, and it's one of my favorites. We all know the typical journal questions, right? The big 5 or 6. So who, what, why, where, how, when, right? Those are all the typical, all the questions. Why is my favorite because why is always followed by because. So when you use the word why, people expect because, right? There's a trigger there. It's automatic. And because resolves the why. People want an answer to be resolved because that makes them trust you, right? It quells the tension. So it also triggers reason. When you answer a question, you are reasonable, you are trustworthy. All these things, your authority gets reconfirmed. All the stuff that you want, right? Because also you can use it to start at the beginning of a sentence. This is something they told you likely you could not do in school, but in fact you can. And the reason you can do that is because you can write like you talk. This is one of these rule breaking things that I love. It also creates pause, which I'll show you in a second. And remember, we were talking about how words sound when you read them. You guys have been hearing me read all of this the whole time, and there's a reason, right? I'm demonstrating exactly what I was telling you before. There's a rhythm, a poetry, staccato, legato to the way people talk and the way we read it. It is very musical, and how we digest what people say is kind of based on that music. So a pause gives people a moment to really digest what you've said and then react, and we're trying to trigger that reaction, right? Why also gets the visual bonus of a question mark. We're going to talk about visuals as well in a little bit, but you're trying to get both the ears and the eyes all working at once, right? So here is an example. Why, how's the weather is the simplest, most powerful question still, plus other sales and marketing pro tips that'll make you go, with moi and Katja. So I have been asking you guys about the weather for this exact reason, because it's stuff that we can relate to, right? It cuts across every race, every demographic, you know, money, social standing, everything. How's the weather? We can all relate to this question and we can all have an answer. And so it's very valuable, actually. And you can see that I'm doing something sneaky here. I'm not using the because. I'm implying that in order to get the because, you have to click the link, right? Does that make sense? So there's a compelling reason to click the link. People want to. Well, why? Why is how's the weather the simple, most powerful question? There's actually a scientific reason, and it's based on value graphics, which is a really amazing idea. Google it, and you guys can kind of learn more about that. I'm sure I'll touch on it in a little bit. But why, how's the weather is the simplest, most powerful question still. So I got my question mark in there. I got my why. You're wondering what the answer is. I'm also using other tricks we've talked about. The value is really clear here. It's right up front. So you're going to get an answer by clicking this question, right? It's not check out my, my presentation with Katja. There's none of that. There's other sales and marketing pro tips that'll make you go, right? So I'm also doing something nostalgia driven. I'm touching on that 90s song, right? Trying to get you to find those familiar touch points. I use the moi again. I use a plus sign. This is some of these visual cues I'll get into in a little bit. I use W. I'm saving my characters here, right? Also, again, with that authority, that'll make you go, That's not that might make you go, It's that will, right? So again, it's that command, the authority, all the things. Okay, so I'm going to just go through another one and then I'll jump back out for chat. Oh, hail, all hail the royal we / you. This is a good one. This is very Shakespearean, right? So the royal we is when someone talks in using we or you. We touched on the your earlier. I did that with you guys because you puts you right in people's shoes, But I want to call attention to this. Using the word I in text is, for most people, perceived as very selfish. It puts the focus on you and not on me, right? I'm the customer or the target, and you want to make me feel like number one, right? That's why at a party you should ask people questions, because people love to talk about themselves. So it's crazy. So you want to really, when you're vomiting and editing, see if you can pull the word I out. When you do that, you'll often push the verb forward, and then you get that call to action and the authority and all the things we were talking about before, right? So that's one little trick there. It can be hard to do, and obviously you don't want to do to the point of like ridiculousness where it's, makes it hard to understand what you're trying to say, but just try that, think about it. Also, we is very inclusive, right? Obviously, and it's a little there's a little psychology tricksy here, because when I say we, you may not be my we, but just by including you in it, I'm making you psychologically feel as though we're on a team together, or we have some kind of relationship, right? Inclusivity, trust, all the things. You and your forces empathy, as I mentioned before, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. So I'll give you an example here of that. We constantly remind ourselves, what's it like to be in their shoes? Sounds obvious, but treating customers how you want to be treated can sometimes conflict with other goals. More on scaling the hard way and the right way with customer experience phenom Dan Gingiss. Okay, so a lot here. Right away, we constantly remind ourselves. So you're asking yourself, who is the we, right? So in this case, I'm playing on two things. Obviously, I'm a woman. I'm looking, I've got the shoes, high heel shoes specifically. So, or for people who wear high heel shoes, whoever you are, I'm specifically addressing underdogs, you might say. And in my case, women entrepreneurs is usually where my audience is, and we have to work 98% harder than men to raise money in venture land. So, I'm obviously, I'm not obviously, but usually talking to this group. So we constantly remind ourselves. I'm doing it twice there. And then I'm doing it again. What's it like to be in their shoes? So I'm reminding you, literally, to think about sympathy in an active way. Get it? Okay. I'm asking a question. You can see that as well. And then sounds obvious. So I'm looking for some sympathy there, because it might sound obvious for some people to do this. So I'm just playing on what I'm assuming is an emotion that you're going to have. But treating customers how you want to be treated. So then I'm saying it out loud. It's the golden rule, right? Treating people how you want to be treated. So again, sympathy, sympathy, sympathy. Can sometimes conflict with other goals. That, by the way, is my twist. So I'm putting conflict is a negative word. We talked about that idea before. So I'm putting that in there. And the idea is for you to think, well, what would the conflict be, right? So you're going to be curious about that. And then I'm being very clear, more on scaling the hard way. So scaling your business the hard way and the right way. See that? So more negative, hard way, but the right way. Not but and. So I'm using my confidence, my command, my authority there, and making this a statement. So you know a lot about what's coming. And then a customer experience phenom Dan, I'm justifying who Dan is. You might not know who Dan is, but at least I'm giving you a little more context about what would happen. And I did it again further in the other hashtags, future of work, corporate culture. So I use hashtags very much as contextualizing, which is the way to do it, by the way. The initial intention for how hashtags are supposed to be used is outdated, and almost doesn't work for anyone anymore. So the way to get them to work for you is to really think about how can you, in a very short way, enhance the understanding of what you're communicating, right? And by the way, trick here on LinkedIn, you don't want to use more than 3. They penalize you if you use more than 3 in any social copy. Yeah. Okay. So let me pop into the chat and see how you guys are doing. Yeah, cool. Awesome. Thank you for that. Everybody looks good. If you have more questions, fire away. I'm doing my best to have a look-see here. And great. All right. I'm going to keep on going. Hopefully you guys are doing all right. I hope so. I'm thirsty. So I'm drinking coffee, iced coffee. I'm still drinking iced coffee, even though it's the middle of October, because I don't want it to be winter yet anyways. Okay. So this one is really my absolute favorite. It's very much about radio, my former career. And you guys have heard me demonstrating this the entire time here. Read what you write out loud. This is the easiest thing you can do to improve any writing at any time, and anybody can do it. It's very easy. And I'm going to give you some demonstrations too. So rule number one, if it feels awkward saying it, it feels awkward reading it, right? So your sympathy, you're constantly thinking how other people are perceiving you. How hard is it for them to understand what you're trying to say, or how easy is it for them to understand that? And then to take action, because that's the objective, right? You want someone to do something. Everything, all communications is about getting someone to do something. Again, whether it's your husband putting the cap on the toothbrush, or your children doing their homework, or somebody signing the contract, right? There's always a purpose. When it feels awkward to the reader, that makes that trust factor go down, right? Remember, trust is our commodity that we all wield here. Very important. So you want to be thinking what feels normal, what feels natural, human, familiar. The phrase is like a vernacular language, right? It's also an excellent way to catch mistakes just by reading what you read out loud. So I'll give you an example, and then I'll show you an example. So this is a thing I got in the mail from West Elm, the furniture company, and they wrote me this. This certificate is issued for reward purposes and is a duplicate of the certificate you received by email. So you guys can actually hear me. That's so hard to say. This certificate is issued for reward purposes, and it's a duplicate of the certificate. Kill me now. Like, it's just legalese. It's really hard to read. What they're trying to tell me is that, hey, dummy, we emailed you a copy of this coupon, and you can't use both. That's what they're trying to say, right? But they made it very difficult for the legal team, I'm sure. So here's another way to kind of think about that. This is how I'm trying to make something really, really simple, and I read it out loud. So I'm trying to communicate emotion, like all kinds of things here. I'll read it for you. When I had to fire a client but didn't have the balls because they owed me so much money, gah, and other catalysts that sprung the lately spring. Real talk with Mark Evans from Marketing Spark. Okay. So what I'm doing here, you guys can tell that my nature is to cut to the chase, and the more familiar I am, the more reaction I get. So this is the kind of cadence that I've built with my audience, right? Now, there's a lot that I'm doing here, and you heard me read it, and you've heard this all day, right? And I'm going to show you some other ones as we're doing this, but I'm starting out with a bit of a non sequitur. When I had to fire a client, so I'm like coming right in to I'm setting the scene. In a movie, when the first scene is the shot of the city, right? That's the I forget there's a name for it, but they're setting the scene to tell you where this movie is taking place. So it's the same idea. I'm just jumping in. When I had to fire a client, so I'm putting you right into some moment of my life, but I didn't have the balls because I don't expect everybody to use colorful language like this. But I've done a few things on purpose. I'm using Z's in place of where S is. I'm using not cuz but because. So again, that we're talking about that vernacular language, human familiar language, right? And then ga, all capital letters. That's like that feeling that you have, right? I could have used an emoji, but I went with ga because I like saying it. I love onomatopoeia. The ellipsis is there for the visual cue, which we've touched on before. Gives you that space break there. I'm not even using a call to action. Do you guys notice this? So I didn't say check out the apple.co link here, which is my interview with Marketing Spark. I didn't say learn more about how to fire a client here. I'm being very tricksy and putting you right in the mix. So what I'm trying to do is to get you to want to know, like, geez, what happened when she fired a client? That sounds like something compelling that maybe it's happened to me, or I really want to do that myself, and I don't have the chutzpah to do it. Then and also by using the link in the middle, I'm getting multiple blue like visual cues here. So that's good, and break up from the text. I've got my open parens here. I forgot to put the close parens somewhere, but that's okay. When I read that, I'm giving you like the sense of an afterthought, which is how I talk, right? You kind of like say something underneath your breath. Then with the sproing, I'm using onomatopoeia again, so you get to hear how that sounds. That sprung the lately sproing. So much there. Sprung, sproing. See these verbs? These verbs are so good. Owed, sprung, fire. And then using these hashtags, real talk with Mark Evans. So you know very much what you're going to get when you, or at least a very good sense of where you're going to get if you click this too, right? I'm going to go back just to a couple more of these so you can see the reading. So here, right? Preach, Drew. Words are the DNA of every sales pitch. The wrong words are costing companies $400 billion in the US alone. Emoji. Don't let that be you, right? So you can see that I've done this the whole time. So we'll give you guys these slides so you can see all of the examples, but I want you to think a lot about, like, does the text of what you're writing communicate the sound, the attention, the tone of voice that you intended to communicate, right? Okay, let's do this one. We've touched on this a lot. Write with your eyeballs. It's the same way to think about food, or people do think about food. So when you're cooking, I used to be a line cook. Everything that Tony Bourdain wrote is 100% true, by the way. I've lived that life. But you want to think of your words the same way you would think of a plate that you're preparing. You know, people do eat with their eyes, and you read with your eyes as well. You're looking for visual cues. You're looking for breaks. All these things cue that sound, the right sound, the tones, and the trust, all that. So you've got this keyboard or pad in front of you with a lot of tools. There's spacing and ellipses and open parentheses and closed parentheses. We've talked about semicolons, N dash, M dash. There's all capital letters. When you're not on social, there's italics and bold. There's just a lot here. So that trustworthy thing is what we're really trying to go for, right? And I'll read you another example here. So even though AI gets top bill at lately, the bedrock of what goes into it is all based on what I learned in radio, plus as a marketing agency owner, drowning in spreadsheets. That sounds crazy, and it is, but also cool as hell. More with my pal, David Meerman Scott. So there's a lot I'm doing here. So first of all, I'll break it out. Even though AI gets the top bill, this is kind of a trick like in the last one where I'm pulling you right into the scene, right? Without a lot of explanation, because I don't need to. I'm going to pull you right into my world. I'm using the shorthand of though. I do this a lot. It saves character count, but it also gives that vernacular language we're talking about, that familiar language. I'm also hashtagging and tagging in the middle of the text. Again, that gives me the blue link and the visuals of just those characters, hashtags, at signs. Again, lots of visual kind of sparks here, right? The bedrock of what goes into it. So even just think about using words that can really color what you're doing. Not unusual words, but sort of more interesting words. And I'll give you guys an example. And Elisa, hopefully you can give everybody the link to this. It's called L. This is my favorite book. It's called L is for Lollygag. L is for Lollygag. Quirky words for a clever tongue. You can get it on Amazon or your local bookshop, I'm sure. The reason I love this book is because it's kind of like a bizarre thesaurus of fun words to say. So like snollygoster, hoi polloi, carbuncular, layabout, tiddlywinks, flummoxed, and it tells you what all these mean and where the origins come from. This is the book that I use to get ideas. You know, when I'm stuck and I want to say something and maybe give it a more panache or pizzazz. Also great words, by the way, because you have to stand out in everything that you're doing, whether it's social or sales, it doesn't really matter. That's also always our challenge. So this is a really great book to help spark your ideas. So other thing I'm doing here, I'm using a plus sign. Look at the space that this gives around here versus and, or even the word plus. I'm all capitalizing the word drowning. You heard me emphasize that. I'm drowning in spreadsheets. And then I further emphasize that with a wave, which is also funny, you know. And then, did you hear the change of the pattern of how I sound? That sounds crazy. And it is, but also cool as hell, right? So I gave you a long sentence here. And you heard me kind of be out of breath as I read it on purpose. I want you to feel the overwhelm I felt a little bit. And then the staccato. You can, by the way, start a sentence with and. You absolutely can. And but. You can also start with but. These are two rule-breaking things that I love that they told us we couldn't do in school, but you absolutely can. It's about writing how you talk, you know. And then I'm using a W instead of with. I'm using pal instead of David Merman Scott. Technically, David Merman Scott is my investor. He's also an author. He's also a board member of HubSpot. So he's a lot of things that aren't necessarily my pal, but I'm looking for that intimacy, that casualness to get you to trust me. I want you to trust David. I want you to feel like you're hanging out with friends. If you decide to click and read of what we're doing or learn more about what we're doing. And the rock horns thing, that's just me because it's part of my personality. You get that, guys? Right? Okay. I'm going to check in to see how everyone's doing just to make sure. Yes. Okay. Everybody seems good. If you have more questions, just definitely let me know, but I'm going to keep on going because we only have about 10 minutes left and I want to make sure we get through everything. Okay. So we touched on the golden rule before. This is so important. Do you guys know the golden rule? Do unto others, right? This applies to life, of course. Don't do something to someone that you wouldn't want them to do to you. It's awful. So really thinking about when you're writing, what's this compassion that you have? You want to remember, or should I use my own trick? Don't forget that the person on the other end, they might have been having a bad day. They might be tired. It might be the end of their day. It might be the morning and they haven't had enough coffee yet. Maybe they were in a fender bender. Maybe someone they know is sick from COVID, like whatever it is. Or maybe they're having a great day. You never know, but you have to really always imagine that other things are happening that don't focus around you and your day, right? You want to put yourself in someone else's shoes whenever possible, and certainly when you're writing. So that helps you hone in on who the audience is and create that sense of empathy or sympathy, compassion, right? That lets you fast forward the connection to them and get things done. The objective is to get them to do something to you, and they're more likely to do that if they feel as though you understand them and can relate to them, right? That's why, how is the weather? It's so important, but like everybody can talk about that. So reading out loud is important. Obviously, you can hear how you sound to others. I have what I like to call a resting bitch face in writing. I just do. So I have to smiley it up. I have to use my emojis. I have to use all these tricks because my bedside manner is flat. It just is, right? You want to just really take that extra time to ensure what you want to communicate will be understood. So remember what I said before. It's let's go back there and just emphasize this. It's vomit and then edit. There's a very good reason why the time spent should be on the editing side. That's where you want to put your true effort into, right? Okay. So here's an example. Sales peeps, mold scripts to your own voice. Otherwise, you sound fake ass and untrustworthy. Plus other tips I learned from a former live and broadcast radio page all the way down. So there's a lot happening here, and I want to unpack this for you. What I'm doing in this moment is I'm trying to get salespeople to think about this exact tactic and mold scripts to their own voice, right? You can tell when someone's feeding you a line that's been pre-written for them. You certainly can do it on the phone when you've called customer service in another foreign country and they're not actually listening to your problem. They're just reading the answers, or on a chat bot, right? So you don't want to be guilty of that yourself. You want to really take the time, even if it's something you've written a million times before, to not only mold it to your own voice, but to think about that person on the other side, right? And by the way, there's a lot that I'm doing here. I'm just going to go through it again so you can see all the tricks here. So we're tagging inside the copy, not only at the end. I'm using peeps, a casual world, not sales professionals, sales enablement employees, like none of that, right? Sales peeps. So it's very clear who this is for right up front. And by the way, when you do that, you exclude people. And when you exclude people like this, in this way, they actually kind of get a little ticked off and they want in. So even the people that I'm not talking to are reading this. Got it? And then you can see I'm starting with a verb, mold scripts to your own voice. So I'm doing that command. The call to action is coming, but here's my command. Your own voice. So that's emphasized with all capital I's. Otherwise, you sound fake ass. Not otherwise you might. Otherwise you could. It's a command. I've got my dash there, not a comma. The comma is grammatically correct, but the dash gives a space. Obviously, I'm brazen enough to use a word like fake ass. You may not be, but that's fine. But untrustworthy is obviously the kicker here. So I'm using the smack your forehead emoji, which is my favorite one. because I want people, and the roll your eyes emoji, right? And I want them to feel a little shame. I'm trying to get that emotion trigger, that lean forward, be like, oh God, I don't do that. I'm guilty of this, right? Then I've got the parentheses there, plus other tips I learned from a former life in broadcast radio page all the way down. So you can see me reading this under my breath. I'm giving them a visual kind of cue here. I'm touching on the broadcast radio thing, which I know to play that card as much as possible. It's interesting. It makes me sound different, like you're going to get a different point of view. And then I'm saying page all the way down because there's a long list of stuff here, and I want them to read mine, because I'm assuming when someone lands on this page, they're not going to see any of the things I just talked about because it's other people's things. So they have to. I'm trying to help them. Just go all the way down, and then you'll get to what I'm talking about here. So trying to think about a little UI, I guess. And then, oops, look, I used 4 hashtags. So I just broke the LinkedIn rule, which happened after I did this. And then using these in context as well. So digital marketing, social selling, copywriting tips. So trying to, again, to contextualize what will they get if they click this and read it, because I want them to trust me and not feel like there's any mystery here. Yeah. Okay. I think we are almost done. Okay, we are almost done. So, oh, the slides always freeze on me when I do this. So I got 2 more tips for you guys. I'm going to power through and then go into the comments. Okay. So this one I haven't touched on yet, but it's something I find everybody is very, very guilty of. So you want to write with a clear objective. Well, I did touch on it a bit. So like I said, everything is about getting someone to do what you want them to do. There's no shame in that, right? I find that women especially feel sometimes shame about, say, asking for money in either raising money or in closing a sale. It's hard to ask for money, but you have to do it. And it feels really good, by the way. But know that going into any conversation, whether it's a conversation or whether it's an email you're writing, or a white paper or whatever it is, that there's has to be an objective, and check yourself on what the objective is all the time, right? Um, for example, people always come to me and they're like, hey, we think we should change the name of our company. And I'm like, well, why? And they're like, well, our sales team is having a hard time saying it because it's like 3 words, so they don't like to say it on the phone. And I'm like, well, are your customers complaining about the name of your company? Is your SEO poor? And if the answers are no, I'm like, well, why would you want to do that? There's no reason. Like, check your objective, right? So you want to identify what the object is, and work backwards. In that case, the object is to alleviate a lazy sales team. I would fire them and get new people, right? In social media, by the way, there's only 2 objectives. It's click and reach. They're very simple. So click is conversion, reach is share. Shares are all about the ego. When you share content, you get credit for it, right? So there's this like weird kind of osmosis leap that happens. It's kind of like in college or school, when somebody gives you a really cool new band and then you share the band with other people, you're suddenly the one with the cool taste, right? So people love sharing content because it makes them look smart or in the know, etc. So you can think about that as your objective. For how-tos, that's what I was talking about before. Clicks always work with how-tos, no matter how large or small a company you are. When you're a small company, it's really hard to get people to click because they don't trust you yet. Your name isn't out there, so you generally are going for the share as your objective versus the click. Except in the case of how-tos, always get clicks. So here is an example. I'm going to read it out for you. Psst, the secret, remember that barf of a book, isn't a secret at all. It's a mindset. More real talk for entrepreneurs and underdogs with my rad pals, Jim and Chris. So I'm doing a lot of the stuff we talked about here. So and you've seen this happen all the time, and I can go through them, but my number one objective always is the reshare, right? I'm looking for you to laugh, to feel emotion, to lean forward. All that stuff makes people share content. The click, I hope, as well, but reshare actually gets me personally more. It gets us social proof, actually. And so, like, we haven't sold to a customer in 2 years who hasn't said, I heard about you from somewhere else, right? That's what I want, because that makes my sale warm instantly goes from cold to warm. So all my sales are warm, which is why one reason we have that 98% sales conversion. Remember I talked about that in the beginning. So that's what you're looking for with all of this, is like to get to the warm lead or the hot lead, convert them on the way, right? It's just all of it goes so much faster. So, so there's my onomatopoeia, and I'm telling you a secret that instantly makes people lean in. Obviously, it's not a secret. I'm doing it publicly, so there's some humor there. I'm talking about The Secret, that book. Remember, terrible book, but actually useful book. And I'm calling it out. It's barf of a book. I like using the word barf. Gives me an excuse to do that. Onomatopoeia. I've got quotes around it because it's a title, but I'm using it for visual. I've got my open parens. I got my question mark here. My verb is remember in this case. And then, excuse me, then there's my negative. It isn't a secret at all. The secret isn't a secret at all. So I'm making a statement, and I'm making kind of a bold statement. So, like, don't waste your time reading that book. Like, here's the answer. It's a mindset. So again, there's the statement. Mindset, by the way, I know is a big topic in the business world. So I'm triggering these things on purpose, and I'm all capitalizing it, upside down smiley face. And the idea is that you're going to wonder, well, how do I get this mindset? What's the mindset, right? And so you want to click and learn, but the least you're gonna share real talk again, entrepreneurs, underdogs. So there's a lot of triggers that I'm using here. My rad pals, W. I use the word rad. I'm not from California, but I'm looking for, again, this familiar language. Instead of using a typical headshot, I'm using one. I don't play guitar. This is a fake guitar. It's actually a cardboard guitar. Of me that I give around instead of a headshot, because again, I'm trying to stand out, all the things. All right, so I know we got to run on here. So this is the last one, and then I'll check for questions. And if there aren't any, no worries. I want you to dog food your own marketing. So dog food comes from Purina. When they were first selling their dog food, it wasn't selling very well. And then they did a commercial of someone actually feeding their dog food to a dog that someone at the company owned. Then the dog ate it on TV. And so it sold like gangbusters because there was like obvious proof that if it was good enough for their dog, it's good enough for your dog, right? So same idea. You want to make sure that everyone in the company should be receiving the messages you're sending out if you're doing this for work, right? So they should be signed up for your newsletters. They should all be following you on social, even if there's operative communications coming from the platform, like a sign up drip feed or something like that. Make sure someone on your team other than you is actually receiving this, or even you at all, not just your customers, right? You want to put yourself in their shoes. Remember sympathy, empathy, we talked about that before. It gives you the opportunity to catch mistakes, to feel, what's being felt on the other side. Also remember that your employees should be your strongest advocates on social and anywhere. And if they aren't following and sharing your message, you certainly have much bigger problems, right? You all need to walk this talk together, especially if you're a small company, because we're bigger together. We're stronger together. We actually do require each other's help because we can't do it by ourselves, And so just sign up for your own stuff, do unto others, and really try to turn the tables on yourself whenever possible. All right, everybody. So thank you so much. I'm just going to try in the chat. I don't see any questions here. So we should be good to go. But if you had any more, I think we're at time. You're welcome to friend me on LinkedIn. When you do, make sure you tell me that you heard me here. I love it when people use my own writing tricks on me. It's hilarious to me and fun. So feel free to do that as well. And Elisa, like I mentioned before, I'll give you actually, I can do it right now. I'm going to give the link to these rules in the private chat, and then you can share them with anybody. Just give me 1 second. Okay, there it is. And then we can also share them again later if you like. So thanks so much, everybody. I loved meeting you, and I hope you're all healthy and feeling stronger. It is winter again for so many of us, so who knows what's coming out in the world, but we can all get through this together. And thanks again. Happy writing.